Welcome back to another episode of SmoothBrainEDH, where we make the smoothest plays with the biggest brains. After several casual videos in a row, we are finally back with some more cEDH gameplay. I'm excited to see how this game goes, so let's hop right into decks and opening hands. Starting with Jason on the partner pairing of Thrasios and Tymna. This 4-color deck plans to keep the table in check while also valuing out with its 2 commanders' abilities, and all while secretly assembling the Thoracle combo. Jason mulligans to an opening hand of Gemstone Caverns, Misty Rainforest, Training Grounds, Dark Ritual, Brainstorm, Enlightened Tutor, and he'll bottom Seedborn Muse. Up next is Logan on Prosper Tomebound. This is a really fast combo deck that plans on casting Doomsday and then setting up a Dualcaster Mage combo. Its commander also provides plenty of extra mana and card advantage. Logan also mulligans down to 6 and keeps a hand of Sulphurous Springs, Verdant Catacombs, Mana Vault, Talisman of Indulgence, Culling the Weak, Demonic Tutor, and he'll bottom Opposition Agent. Next up is Matt on Winota, Joiner of Forces. This deck is all about snowballing, big attacks, and stacks creatures. I don't really think I need to explain any more, other than it also has a Kiki combo in it. Matt will keep his first hand of Plains, Battlefield Forge, Spectator Seating, Mana Confluence, Mana Crypt, Deflecting Swat, and Imperial Recruiter. And now, last but not least, we have Cameron playing the partner pairing of Tymna and Ikra Shadiki. This here's an Adnaz deck, planning to use Tymna to get value and Ikra to have a bigger Adnaz, with a finishing combo that uses Chain of Smog. Cameron keeps an opening hand of a Snow Forest, Misty Rainforest, Smothering Tithe, Elves of Deep Shadow, Blood Pet, Esper Sentinel, and Dothy Voidwalker. Alright, we're about to hop into it, but before we do, let us know down in the comments who you think's going to take the victory today. While you're down there, don't forget to check out all of our links leading to our Discord, our Patreon, you name it. We've also got a couple links to our affiliates, first up being Dragon Shield. If you're looking for any high quality sleeves, deck boxes, or playmats, be sure to check out that link. Magic is an expensive hobby, so you want to protect your purchases. And our second affiliate is Inked Gaming. Is there a custom design or art you think would look amazing on a playmat? Well, check out our affiliate link and make it. It'll look awesome. But that's enough talk for now, guys. Let's hop into the gameplay. Looks like Logan wins the die roll, but Jason has pregame effects. He'll play his Gemstone Caverns and exile Enlightened Tutor. Then, starting on turn 1, Logan will start by playing Sulphurous Springs, and then he'll tap it for a colorless to cast his Mana Vault. He'll then tap his Mana Vault for 3 colorless to cast his Talisman, floating 1 colorless, and then he taps his Talisman for a black, and then uses that other colorless to cast Demonic Tutor. After searching, the turn is passed to Matt, who will start off with Spectator Seating, then he'll cast his Mana Crypt. He'll then tap for 3 and cast Imperial Recruiter. He searches up a Rogue Rack to his hand, and then he'll cast it. The turn is then passed to Cameron, who will start off by casting a Chrome Mox, imprinting his Blood Pet. He'll then play a Misty Rainforest, and he'll crack it for a Savannah. He then casts his Esper Sentinel, and Jason will respond by casting Brainstorm, drawing 3 and putting 2 back. And then the turn will be passed to Jason. He'll play his own Misty Rainforest and crack it for an Underground Sea. He'll then cast Dark Ritual, not paying 1 to Esper Sentinel. Then after it resolves, he'll cast Tymna. And then he'll pass the turn to Logan, who'll start off with an Ancient Tomb as land for turn, and then he'll cast Prosper, taking 4 damage between his lands and his Talisman. He'll then move to his end step and exile Reign of Filth. The turn is then passed to Matt, who wins his Crypt trigger, and then he'll play a Plains as land for turn, tap for 4, and cast Winota. She'll resolve, and then Matt will move to combat and swing Rograk at Cameron. 1 Winota trigger puts Zealous Conscripts onto the battlefield, and he'll steal Esper Sentinel for the turn. The Conscripts will also be going in Cameron, so he'll take 3 damage. And then after this, Matt will just pass the turn. Now on Cameron's turn, he'll cast a Mox Diamond and pitch his Snow Forest. He then taps for 2 and casts Grim Monolith. Then taps for another 4 to cast Smothering Tithe. The turn is then passed, and Jason doesn't pay for Tithe, but he will move to combat and swing for 2 at Cameron. And then post-combat, Jason will lose a life and draw a card, with no tithes being paid. He'll then play a Bloodstained Mire as land for turn, and immediately fetches with it for a Bayou. Then, after casting Thrasios, he'll pass the turn to Logan, who doesn't pay for Smothering Tithe, and then plays Verdant Catacombs, and he'll immediately fetch with it for a Badlands. He then casts Reign of Filth from exile, and he gets a treasure from this, and Cameron gets to draw off Esper Sentinel. He'll then sacrifice the treasure and 2 of his lands for 3 black, and he'll cast Doomsday. But Jason has an offer Logan can't refuse, and he counters the spell, making Logan true treasures. Cameron also gets another Esper Sentinel draw. Continuing on, Logan will then cast a Goblin Engineer and find Cloudstone Curio to the graveyard. He then passes the turn and exiles Top from Prosper. Matt loses his Crypt trigger, doesn't pay for Smothering Tithe, and then plays Battlefield Forge. He'll tap for 3, taking 1 to his Forge to cast Legion Warboss. And then thanks to Winota and Rograk, he's able to channel a Sokenzin for only 2 mana. He'll then move to combat, make a 1/1 Goblin, and then will swing his tokens, Rograk, and Winota at Cameron. There are 4 Winota triggers, and the first one puts Serra Ascendant onto the battlefield, also going at Cameron. The second is Grand Abolisher, going at Cameron. The third is Esper Sentinel, going at Cameron. And the fourth is Drannith Magistrate, also going at Cameron. There are no blocks, and after counting a little, Cameron has to take 16 damage. And then the turn is passed to Cameron, who will start off by casting Necropotence. Matt draws off Esper Sentinel, Cameron misses Smothering Tithe, and then he casts Elves of Deep Shadow. After this, he'll pay 10 life to Necropotence, exiling 10 cards. Cameron then invokes out Endurance, exiling Wildgrowth, to shuffle Logan's graveyard to the bottom of his library. He'll then move to his end step and get all those exiled cards from Necropotence, and has to discard/exile 4 cards. Now on Jason's turn, he won't pay for Smothering Tithe, and then he'll move to combat and swing for 1 at Cameron, who chumps with Elves of Deep Shadow. Post-combat, Jason will cast his Training Grounds, and there are 2 Esper Sentinel triggers. Cameron will respond to the triggers by casting a Vampiric Tutor. It resolves, Jason doesn't pay for either Esper Sentinel, and Matt doesn't pay for Smothering Tithe. Jason will just pass the turn to Logan after this. Logan doesn't pay for Smothering Tithe in his draw step, and then shocks in a Blood Crypt on his main phase. He'll then cast Culling the Weak, sacrificing his Goblin Engineer. He doesn't pay for Esper Sentinels, and Matt doesn't pay for Smothering Tithe. He'll then float 7 mana, leaving only 1 treasure remaining, and cast Shatter Skull Smashing, X is equal to 5. His targets are Drannith Magistrate for 3 damage, and Legion War Boss for 2. Matt will respond by casting Deflecting Swat, not paying for Esper Sentinel, but Jason responds with Flusterstorm. He will pay for Matt's Sentinel, but not Cameron's. Flusterstorm's storm count doesn't really matter because Matt is tapped out, so the swat is countered and Logan's smashing resolves. He'll then use his last treasure to cast Sensei's Divining Top, getting another treasure, and then he'll move to his end step and Prosper will exile Scalding Tarn. Cameron will then stay on his end step and cast Tainted Pact, and Matt misses an Esper Sentinel trigger. The first card Cameron flips is Assassin's Trophy, which is exactly what he was looking for, so he'll put it to his hand. He'll then pay 2 to Ass Blast Matt's Grand Abolisher. It resolves, Matt finds a mountain to the battlefield, and then the turn is Matt's. And he won't pay for Smothering Tithe in his draw step. He'll then move to combat and will swing his 3 tokens, Rograk, Serra Ascendant, and Winota at Cameron. 4 Winota triggers are put on the stack, and Cameron responds by casting Angel's Grace. Esper Sentinel triggers, and Matt draws a card, but Cameron forgets Smothering Tithe. The first Winota trigger gets Blade Historian, and it's declared at Logan. Second trigger gets Mother of Runes, also going at Logan. Third gets Recruiter of the Guard, also going at Logan, and it has an ETB search trigger. Ethersworn Canonist is the found card, and then the fourth Winota trigger is a whiff. Before blocks, Cameron decides to go ahead and pay 5 life to Necropotence to exile 5 cards. Logan will block one of the 1/1s, and then the rest of the damage goes through. Post-combat, Matt will cast his Ethersworn Canonist, and then he passes the turn to Cameron, who will start off by casting a Soul Ring. Matt's Sentinel will trigger, and Cameron won't pay for it, but Matt will pay for Smothering Tithe. Cameron will then cast a Hope of Gearper, because, gotta get those blockers out right now. He'll then move to his end step, put the 5 cards into his hand, and exile 2 cards during his cleanup. The turn is then passed to Jason, who doesn't pay for Smothering Tithe, and Cameron catches that here in a second. Jason will then move to combat and swing for 1 at Cameron, who puts Hope of Gearper under the bus. And then Jason will pass the turn to Logan, who also doesn't pay for Smothering Tithe. He will, however, play Scalding Tarn from exile, getting him another treasure. He'll then fetch with it to find a mountain to the battlefield. He then casts Jessica's Will, targeting Cameron. There are 2 Esper Sentinel triggers on the stack. Cameron decides to respond to his own Esper Sentinel trigger by casting Noxious Revival to put Angel's Grace on the top of his library. Matt's Esper Sentinel trigger, and Cameron will pay for it. The 2 original triggers will then resolve, and Logan won't pay for either of them, and then Matt won't pay for Smothering Tithe. Logan will make 7 red mana off this Jessica's Will, and he exiles Sulphurous Springs, Thoughtseize, and a Swamp. He'll then pay with Top to look at the top 3 cards of his library. Logan will then swap his tops, and forgetting this is a draw effect, Cameron misses a Smothering Tithe trigger, and then the turn is passed to Matt, and Top is re-exiled. Matt loses his Crypt trigger, and then will pay for Smothering Tithe. Then on his main phase, he'll cast Thalia, Guardian of Thraben. Matt will then move to combat, and he swings Serra Ascendant, Recruiter of the Guard, and Imperial Recruiter at Cameron, then his 3 tokens, Rograk, Blade Historian, and Winota at Logan. There are 4 Winota triggers on the stack, and Cameron will respond by casting Angel's Grace again, and he will pay for Esper Sentinel. First Winota trigger is a whiff, the second is a Ranger Captain of Eos, ETB trigger tutors Ragavan, and he sends this one at Logan. The third one is Professional Facebreaker, and he'll send it at Jason, and then the fourth one is a whiff. Moving to blocks, Logan puts Prosper under the Winota bus to save him 8 damage and to keep him from dying. Then Cameron will take a lot of damage but can't go under 1, Jason takes 4, and Logan will take 16. And then after damage is taken, with how Professional Facebreaker and Double Strike works, Matt makes 6 treasure tokens. He should also be gaining 12 life off of his Serra Ascendant because damage still is dealt, but he forgets to, and honestly at this point it really doesn't matter. Matt will then cast an Ornithopter, then plays Ancient Tomb, and then will pass the turn to Cameron, who will play a Snow Swamp as lane for turn, and then cast Witherbloom Apprentice. Cameron will then pass the turn to Jason, who will activate Thrasios on instep, bottoming his Scry, and then reveals Rejuvenating Springs, which goes to the battlefield. Then on his turn, Jason doesn't pay for Smothering Tithe, and then he goes to combat and swings for 2 lifelink at Logan, who has to just take it. Post-combat, Jason loses a life and draws a card, and doesn't pay for Smothering Tithe again. The turn is then passed to Logan, who goes to 1 on his upkeep because of Mana Vault, and he won't pay for Smothering Tithe. He'll then cast Sensei's Divining Top, and then Stitcher's Supplier, milling 3 cards. He'll then pay to top to look at the top 3, rearrange them, and then swap his top. Cameron remembers it's a draw this time, and Logan doesn't pay for Smothering Tithe. With his 1 non-artifact spell already cast, Logan passes the turn. Matt loses his Crypt Trigger, and then on upkeep, he'll sacrifice Ranger Captain of Eos to make sure no one else can cast non-creature spells this turn. The ability will resolve, and after some quick math, Matt has lethal. He easily kills Cameron and Logan, and Jason doesn't have enough blockers to stop what's coming. Not to mention, Matt can dash out his Ragavan, and then there's going to be 6 Winota triggers. There's no way the rest of the table can get out of this alive, so they all agree to pack it up. So Matt is today's winner. Way to go, man. Winota was crazy. Well, everyone, there you have it. That was a very action-packed game. So much was happening. Yeah, some triggers were missed, but I don't really think that affected the game at all. Did you expect Winota to win there? I sure did. I knew she would in my heart of hearts. But also because I've played against that Winota deck before, and it's scary. Those stacks pieces and creatures snowball so fast. Let us know what you guys thought down in the comments below. We love hearing from you. And don't forget to check out all those links in the descriptions. There's deck lists too if you want to see what everybody played, see if they're different from what's on the database. As always, you guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you next week in our next video. Have a smooth day.